I distinctly remember the first time I used Visual Studio, and it changed the way I thought about building applications and productivity that comes by using something like Visual Studio. With innovations like cloud, mobile, artificial intelligence, the opportunity for developers to drive real change and ride the new wave of transformation is greater than ever. Today, we are delivering Visual Studio 2017, designed to empower any developer to build any app on any platform. We can't wait to see what developers build with it. Happy birthday, Visual Studio.
Visual Studio, the most exciting advance in developer tools that Microsoft has ever made.
My favorite feature of Visual Studio, of all the thousands of months of blogs about over the years, it has to be incremental search, Control I.
The thing I love about Visual Studio the most is the fact that it supports such a wide range of technologies and workflows.
I still remember the day I drove to Egghead Software and purchased Visual C++ 1.5.
Happy birthday!
Greetings from Germany. Herzlichen Glückwunsch zum Geburtstag.
Všechno nejlepší Visual Studio.
Feliz aniversario Visual Studio.
A happy birthday, Visual Studio, from me and the Octocat.
祝 Visual Studio 20周年生日快乐
Happy birthday, Visual Studio.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Microsoft Corporate Vice President Julia Lucen.
Welcome to the Visual Studio 2017 launch event. Today, we're celebrating 20 years of innovation with Visual Studio. I have met with many developers over the last 20 years, and I've heard lots of great and amazing stories. I'd like to share a particular story today with you that really inspired me personally. With that, let's invite Brian and Brianna Lagunas on stage. So Brian, I'd love for you to share a little bit with the audience how you decide to become a developer.
Yeah, well, actually, I have a pretty interesting story. Most developers have interesting stories of how they got where they are. Mine actually started in the Army. I was an Army infantryman for about 4 years. When I was medically discharged, the only thing I was really qualified to do was become a cop. So it's the first thing I did. It was my first job. I was a police officer for a couple of years. Really didn't like that job, didn't suit me very well. So I decided to follow one of my childhood passions, which is more artistic, and be more of an animator or like 3D games. So during that process, I actually discovered code. So I used Visual Studio to write my first line of code, and ever since then, I've been a developer.
Thank you. And how long ago was that?
About 2002 or 2003-ish.
That was our Visual Studio.NET release era. Yeah. So I see that you also have Brianna here with you. And I think you have more than one developer in your family?
Yeah. Brianna, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Brianna, and I'm 10 years old, and I started coding when I was 6.
That is so amazing. Wow. You know, Brianna, isn't that amazing? So I have always been super passionate about having girls and women in technology and STEM field. You started so early. I wish every single girl started this early just like you. So tell us a little bit about what was the first application you built?
Well, using Visual Studios, I made a calculator app, but I named it Princess Calculator because at the time I liked Disney princesses.
That is great. So, Brianna, we also have a couple of pictures of you up here. Can you tell us about this one that you are behind a podium?
I did editor for that year in Terrapin Logo.
And then you were presenting, looks like?
Yeah.
Where were you presenting?
Boise Code Camp.
That is amazing. To how many people?
I don't know, but I have more attendees than my dad.
She did. She pulled close to 90 people in her very first session. And so when she was 6, that was her first year presenting at Boise Code Camp. And her presentation actually inspired an entire kids track at Boise Code Camp, which we have to this day, and it's our most popular track.
Wow. That is so amazing. Well, so thank you, Brian, so much for coming over here and sharing your experiences and your amazing daughter with us. Thank you, Brianna.
Yeah,
Thank you for having us.
Brianna is definitely the youngest Visual Studio user that I have ever met. And I think she's on her way to great success in the future. In the last 20 years, developers have been using Visual Studio to build different kind of applications. Our core vision for Visual Studio in the last few years have really been anchored around we want to support any developer and any development teams, be very successful in building any kind of applications, and no matter what kind of platform they're targeting. And with the Visual Studio family, we now have Visual Studio, the IDE, on both Windows and the Mac. We have Visual Studio Code, which is our lightweight editor. And with Visual Studio Code, the product we released only last April, we're seeing 1.3 million monthly active users using the product already. Visual Studio Mobile Center allows developers to build high-quality mobile applications and enables them to have really rapid release cycle development. And obviously, we have Visual Studio Team Services, which is our complete DevOps solution for teams of any size, and no matter what kind of programming language you're developing. Today, the start of the attraction is Visual Studio 2017. Thinking back, about 18 months ago, as we start planning this product, we asked ourselves, what are the top critical pain points our developers are actually feeling? And what are the critical industry trends that we really need to support? And those are the key things we want to build into Visual Studio 2017. And with that in mind, we actually focus Visual Studio into 4 key areas of investment. The very first area is really focusing on the fundamentals of the product. What we heard loud and clear from our developers is that they have been using Visual Studio to build mission-critical applications. Over the years, as their application grew, as the complexity of the solution grew, they want Visual Studio to keep up with that growth and continue to be very fast, very lean, and very performant, no matter what size the solution actually is. And that is area we made significant improvement in the product, from startup all the way to how people interact in editor, to debugging experiences. We have made the product substantially faster. We have also made substantial productivity improvements in the core IDE to make sure that every user of the product will get benefit out of those capabilities. Cloud. It's changing how the software is being built today. And we're seeing the cloud computing momentum continue to grow rapidly. And with Visual Studio 2017, we have a highly focused experience in Visual Studio that allow a developer to easily build, debug, test, and deploy their applications to the cloud. We obviously recognize the importance of mobile development. And about almost a year ago, we acquired Xamarin. And since that acquisition, we have seen tremendous momentum with our customers using Xamarin to build mobile applications with Visual Studio. Again, with Visual Studio 2017, we're seeing lots of great capabilities that allow our developers to write those 5-star mobile applications across Android and iOS and Windows. We're also seeing development teams being asked to react faster to the market-changing conditions. They're being asked to do more, deliver value faster to their customers, and deliver it in a continuous kind of way. And the methodology we have been championing for a while is the DevOps methodology. As with Visual Studio 2017, we have the best-in-class DevOps solution for our development teams. So today, I'm very excited to announce the general availability of Visual Studio 2017. And I would highly encourage every single one of you to download it now at visualstudio.com. To celebrate the release, if you download the product within the first week, you will be getting 60 days of free Xamarin University trainings to beef up your mobile development skills. So, before Scott comes on stage to actually do a deep dive of all of the features and give Visual Studio 2017 a run, I also want to show a video of a close partnership that we have worked with in the last year. This company is Huawei in China. Let's roll the video.
We want to connect people anywhere, anytime.
Developers is very important in Huawei. We have 80,000 developers in our company. Huawei's culture is custom-focused. So as the development, we should improve our efficiency and develop our product more quickly. I think Visual Studio 2017 is the most powerful IDE in the world. Huawei has the largest code base that Microsoft has ever seen, which is about 1 GB and 24,000 source files.
Because we're just based on C++ in Huawei company, but in the past, we have to install some other components that we don't need it. But now we can just choose components we wanted to use. So now we can use Visual Studio to doing continuous integration and deployment. Very convenient.
The improvement of intelligences and the developer assistant tools makes the development more productive.
Huawei is an open company. We cooperate with Huawei's partners. We also cooperate with open source.
Visual Studio 2017 can develop Linux software well and debug against Linux. This feature is very important for us. I like this feature very much. It's cool.
It makes cross-platform development easier.
And Microsoft is a developer-centric company. And Huawei, we are beginning to build an engineering culture. So we want to cooperate with Microsoft to improve Huawei's developers' productivity.
Happy birthday, Visual Studio! Visual Studio, 生日快乐！耶！
I'm super proud of the collaboration and partnership that we have worked together with Huawei. With that, now it's time to see Visual Studio 2017 in action. I would like to welcome Scott Hanselman on stage.
Hey, friends. No, please. Hi, friends. I have to say I am really humbled and proud to kind of represent the team, because I think that those of you who are watching this at home and those of you who have come here today to the launch event, you see certain people on stage often, and you forget that there are 1,700 people who work on this product every day, who care about this product. I am humbled, my demoers are humbled, and we very much appreciate the opportunity to represent the team today and Visual Studio 2017, which launches, and I'm super excited to share this with you. So we're going to talk a lot about the developer inner loop, this concept about how developers loop, that experience of writing code and debugging, hitting F5 and debugging, and moving in that loop. It's going to get better. We're going to talk about a great mix of mobile first and cloud first, with an improved foundation with a focus on productivity. And we're trying to make a product here for every developer, for every individual developer, for everyone who works on a team, whether it be a small team or a giant team that goes across continents. So we got two main focus areas here, all right? Both of these areas are about making you feel productive, about making you feel happy. This streamlined foundation has a new lightweight and modular installer, better acquisition experience. We've got great perf, we've got an improved memory footprint, and we've got expanded support for dozens of languages and syntax highlighting. We've got boosted productivity. We're going to see demos that show some of the great new refactoring tools that we've got, being able to easily search and navigate through huge, even hundreds of projects. We're going to see next-gen code analysis and helpers, and some new advanced debugging experiences like the new exception helper. So we're bringing you experts from the product team, and I'm happy to bring up Casey Anderson, who works on the Visual Studio IDE on diagnostics.
So with the release of Visual Studio today, many of you will be downloading and installing Visual Studio 2017 for the very first time. I want to show you how easy we have made it to get you up and get you going. Step 1, install. We've improved your install experience and broken down Visual Studio into 16 different workloads. It's like a menu for your IDE, so you can order up the app development you want and then only install actually what you use. We've got everything from .NET desktop development to Linux development with C++ and lots of options in between. So after I've installed, let's open her up. Over here on the start page, we have a recent list that shows your recent projects and solutions that you've opened. And when you sign into VS, any projects and solutions that you've opened from a cloud-connected source control will travel with you. So as you sign into new instances of Visual Studio, it's a one-click on the project to begin the checkout process. So what happens if my code isn't in my recent list? Well, I've got to go get it, and oftentimes that's from source control. So we have a new Checkout From section, and I can check out my code from Visual Studio Team Services. And simply search to find my project, and then click on it and begin the clone. Easy as that. I don't have to remember any long URLs or try to find the repo on the internet. Now that my project has finished cloning, it's time to open the solution. I heard from a friend that this particular solution has over 100 projects in it. So I went ahead and enabled lightweight solution load ahead of time. So when I open this project, you can see that the 103 projects solution loads nearly instantly. Yeah. Boom, done. Ready to get to my code. Look at me, already being productive. And you know, that's the real thing, isn't it? Productivity isn't just about writing your code. It's about those small things you do every day and being able to do them faster to really boost your productivity. So, step 0, if you want to be a power developer, is to go to visualstudio.com and download 2017 today. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Casey. That was great. Now, that was one developer's experience, but we also know that software development is a team sport. We often find ourselves working in teams, whether they be remote teams or diverse teams across large distances. We want to go and create a product that supports these trends that we're identifying in this space. We think it's a team sport. We also think that Agile and DevOps are starting to change the flow. Now, certainly we realize that individual productivity still matters, but I want to look at a view of DevOps. This is kind of a traditional view of DevOps. Now, this isn't necessarily saying it's waterfall or Scrum or Scrummerfall, but the general sense of how development happens is largely unchanged. You've got code editing that moves its way through deployment and then it cycles. We think that we can do better. We want to tighten that cycle, and we want to catch issues before check-in. We want to identify issues in production with data and then push those things as far to the left as we possibly can. So what happens to your development lifecycle when you apply those concepts? They're called shift-left concepts. As we move ourselves closer and closer to the developer, what kinds of improvements can we potentially make? We can include continuous integration, that real-time experience, and we can have something like this. In this first example, we'll go and we'll drive that immediate feedback loop, that developer's inner loop, through an implementation of edit and continue. Now, next up, we could talk about unit testing. if you haven't tried our live unit testing, you're in for a treat in this next demo. Now, another way for shifting left is live code analysis. How can we give the tools that the developer needs up front so they can make the decisions to then write better code? If they can do that when they're editing the code, then we're going to find fewer errors in production. You're getting the concept, right? Ready for another demo? Let's bring up Casey Illenhout, who works on a lot of these features. Thank you.
All right, howdy y'all, how we doing? Having fun? All right. The performance improvements you just saw with the other Casey help you get to your code fast. And the productivity improvements I'm about to show you help you write your code fast. The new productivity improvements we've added in Visual Studio 2017 allow you to make major code changes quickly and with confidence while keeping you in the zone of your development. Here I have a simple program that's just helping me tweak my different bike workouts. Probably the first thing you're noticing are all these icons on the left-hand side. These are part of live unit testing. Live unit testing is constantly running your unit test in the background and updating these icons to let you know the status of your code. A red X indicates that this line is hit by at least one failing test. A green check means that this line is hit by all passing tests, and a blue dash means that this line is not covered by any tests at all. I can click on an icon to see exactly which tests are hitting here, and I can click on the test itself to navigate directly to it. I'm not totally sure why this test is failing, so I'm going to go ahead and start debugging it. It looks like I've thrown a null reference exception. This is part of the new exception helper in Visual Studio 2017, where we try to put the most pertinent information at the top level, like which variable is null. You can see here it even works when you have a chain of dotted expressions. So it could have been today's workout that was null or notes, but this is letting me know that it's specifically notes that is returning null. So now that I know notes can be null, I want to see if there's anywhere else in my code where I'm accessing a member of notes where I can potentially have another null reference exception. To do this, I'm going to do find all references. Whoa, this looks totally different. No longer is find all references a simple flat list. Now it's colorized, and we even allow you to custom group how things are sorted in your results. Yeah. If I take a look through these results, I can see the only member I'm ever accessing off of notes is length, and I already have a test covering that. It's currently failing, so let's go fix it. I can quickly navigate to where I'm initializing this. I never should be able to initialize notes as null. The whole point of this app is to make fun tweets of my bike workouts to impress my friends. So I'm just going to add a quick null check. So I'm going to try to throw a new argument null exception, and as I'm typing, you may be noticing that IntelliSense looks a little different. In Visual Studio 2017, we've added this tray of icons along the bottom to allow you to filter your completion list by category. This is especially helpful if you're working with a complex API or in a large code base where your completion list can have many items in it. Or if you're a WPF developer, it's really helpful to sort this by events only. I'm going to finish typing all of this by using camel case matching, and then finishing off my statement. And if you're looking over to the left-hand side, you can see live unit testing is figuring out which tests were impacted by this code change, running them, and updating these icons to let me know that all my tests are now passing. Yeah. So now I want to quickly navigate back to that initial method that I was working in. I could hunt for this in the Solution Explorer or try to remember which of my open tabs and which file it's in and scroll to find it. Or I could just use Go to All, which I can trigger with Control-T. Go to All allows you to quickly navigate to any file, type, member, or symbol declaration from a single location. I can use a query syntax to filter it to only members, and then I can start to type in the name of my method and navigate directly there. I can see that all of my tests are passing. So before I submit this code for review, I actually just want to clean it up a little bit. In Visual Studio 2017, we've added the concept of code suggestions. Code suggestions allow you to hint best practices or alternate coding patterns to developers. So if I want to access the one that's here, I can just press Control Dot, and it's going to tell me I should use the explicit type instead of var. This is because my team truly believes that you should always use the explicit type instead of var to promote understanding and readability. If I want to actually apply this, I can just press Enter, and now my code adheres to my team's style. In fact, Visual Studio 2017 supports coding conventions by allowing your team to configure your own team preferences and enforce them however they want inside the editor with an editor config file. Editor config is an open source file format, and we've worked with their community to have it work with .NET code style as well. If I scroll down, you can see here are our var preferences for my team. You can see that we choose to not prefer var, and that if you do violate this rule by using var, it's going to be triggered as a suggestion inside the editor to fix it. Alternatively, I could have made it a warning or an error if I want to be a real stickler for having consistent code style everywhere. I'm just going to keep it as a suggestion for now. Also, building on top of this, you can define your own naming conventions in editor config. So if I investigate what's going on here, we can see that I violated my team's naming convention. And this wants me to use Pascal case for methods. And so again, with a single click, I can now make my code adhere to my team's code style. Not only are code suggestions great for helping drive consistency across a repository, but also they're great for teaching you new language features. Perhaps the most exciting language feature coming in C#7 is tuples. Tuples allow you to return multiple values from a method, so you don't have to juggle out parameters. So you can see here I'm returning both a workout and a double. You can see I'm consuming it down here, and then I'm accessing my tuple elements with their default names of item 1 and item 2. If you look closely, you can see I'm getting a code suggestion here. So if I investigate it, you can see that it's telling me to use the explicit tuple name rather than its default name of item 1 and item 2. So I can just quickly apply this fix to improve the readability of my code. If you remember when I was adding that null check earlier, you may have noticed there was a code suggestion available there. So again, I'm going to quickly navigate there with Control-T, and sure enough, you can see I have a suggestion here. If I investigate this one, I can see that's telling me to use the C#7 throw expression to help condense my code. Now that my code base adheres to my team's code style and I've helped move my code forward by embracing the new C#7 language features, I'm almost ready to submit this code for review. The last thing I gotta do is refactor. Visual Studio 2017 has added a ton of new refactorings to help make you more productive. Especially if you're a developer like me, where when I prototype, I put all my types in one file, and then later I need to go back and pull them out into their own files. So rather than having to cut and paste and add new item file, I can just do this with a single click in Visual Studio 2017. You can see here I have a bike workout in my bike workout file, but I also have a distance workout, and I have one other type that I can't quite see. So rather than scroll, I can use the now built-in indent guides to see exactly what other type is there. To access a refactoring, I can just use the same Control Dot that I was using before. And if you look here, you can see that's offering to move my type to a file with a matching name. And then there you go, and a single click, it's gone. I can scroll up and do the same with my other type. And now I've cleaned up my file so that I only have a single type that matches the file name that I have. And here is where the true power of live unit testing comes in. I made a major code change. I added new files, I moved code around, and live unit testing figured out which tests to run, so I didn't have to go hunt them down in Test Explorer. It ran them for me without me having to press a button, and it updated the icons in the editor so I didn't have to lose the context of my development. These are just some of the productivity features we've added in Visual Studio 2017, and we can't wait to hear what you think.
All right. Thank you very much, Casey. That was fantastic. And for the record, everyone should use var exclusively. And I also use kebab casing, just like word hyphen, word hyphen. It's called kebab casing. So we've seen great productivity improvements for every kind of developer. Now, we've seen newer workloads and things like C#7, but we've made improvements all the way through the product. We're talking about things in WinForms with upcoming high DPI support. We've made improvements in F#. We've made improvements in WPF. Even if you didn't hear your favorite technology mentioned in this launch, it's probably been improved in some way in Visual Studio 2017. So you're going to have a great experience no matter what technology that you're working on. Now we're going to shift over to the cloud a little bit. This is, of course, one of the big things that we've been seeing a lot growing, one of the workloads that's been growing very quickly. So let's focus there next. Now, it's not just about the UI and the front end. It's all about those cloud-powered services on the back end. And for my cloud, I choose to use .NET Core. And .NET Core tooling has been made even easier in Visual Studio 2017 to connect to the cloud, but to containerize your applications. And Azure's got your back. It's got your back end with a whole host of platform services that you can use. This is all that core infrastructure that you need that just goes so much more beyond infrastructure as a service. We see a lot of people naively moving their VMs into the cloud and saying, our transition to the cloud is complete. But in fact, we have platform as a service with app service. We've got software as a service, a whole host of services that don't make overly prescriptive judgments about how you should write your application, because reality is a hybrid. So we're providing that core infrastructure that allows you to use these services in our public cloud or on-prem, trying to make hybrid easy. And as you know, I came here from an open source background, so open source is super important to me. And it's all about choice. It's about choice, it's about open source, and it's about flexibility on Azure. And we are offering just a whole series of integrations and connectors, basically allowing a come-as-you-are style to development. Whatever you decide to use on the DevOps side, whatever database makes you happy, whatever applications you want to run, we want to enable that because, as I said, reality is a hybrid cloud. So while I'm going to be talking about .NET and .NET Core, next, I want you to understand that the choice is yours, and Visual Studio 2017 and Azure are ready for whatever technologies you bring to it. So, .NET, my language, my experience, my platform, we're moving towards a unified platform and ecosystem, trying to be managed by the .NET Foundation and then powered by this common infrastructure with the .NET Standard. It's going to offer you great tooling options and great cross-platform experiences, whether you choose to do the framework on Windows applications, the .NET Core framework for your cross-platform services, or whether you use Xamarin and Mono tools for your mobile applications. .NET Core, that I'm currently excited about, is optimized for the cloud. Right? We've talked about this. It's cross-platform. It runs on Windows. It runs on dozens of flavors of Linux. It runs on Mac. And it's one of the fastest frameworks out there. If you check out the Tech Empower benchmarks, we're up there in the top 10 or so, and we're getting better every week with some great improvements and contributions from the community. .NET Core really promises to be lightweight. It has a no-impact deployment, and it's extremely modular. And I think it's perfect for containers and a world that is moving towards containers for deployment. And again, we're trying to do everything open source. That means the runtimes, the libraries, the compilers, the languages, the tools, all being developed in the open on GitHub. Yeah, we're pretty excited about that. So take all of this holistically, Visual Studio and .NET, we're going to combine for a great development experience and a great Azure development experience. As we saw during the installation demo, there is a workload for Azure. You just click that, and it includes the Azure tools and SDKs that you need to go and deploy your things up to Azure. Again, there are many possible combinations for how you might choose to pick languages, tools, open source libraries, and deploy to Azure. But my choice is Visual Studio and .NET and Azure. So let's have Beth Massey come up and show us how easy this is.
All right, thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. Okay, so back in June, we released .NET Core Runtime and Framework 1.0. However, the tools themselves were in preview, and we've gone through a couple iterations since. You early adopters, I want to thank you for your patience. So I'm happy to announce today that we are releasing the first version of the .NET Core tools. So these tools are based on a new project system that is consistent with the rest of .NET and MS Build. The previous tools worked with a project system based on project.json. And the reason why people liked it is because it was really easy to edit your project properties and dependencies. However, we think what we've got here with the new CS Proj format is the best of both worlds. So let's take a look. Now, if you've been building apps on .NET Core preview tooling, never fear, we have a migration for you. Visual Studio, I'm going to open up in Visual Studio a 2015 project that I built. Notice that we automatically get the standard project migration dialog with a backup made here. Now, if you're using the command line, the tools, you just have to type .NET migrate on the command line, and the exact same thing will happen. In fact, in Visual Studio 2017 is just calling the command line and executing all of the commands. So you are in complete control. All right, so what did that actually do? Let's take a look at the CS Proj file itself, the project file. I'm going to right-click on this project, and I'm going to edit the CS Proj. OK, so notice that when I say the new format, it's not this super scary, crazy, unreadable XML format that we had before. There's no like GUIDs, there's no hint paths. We don't even have to like specify each file individually. By default, any file that I put inside this project folder will just appear in the solution and be part of it. Pretty cool. All right, so I'm going to take a look at these dependencies nodes. Notice that it's not references aren't just lumped all together and you need to figure out where they're all coming from. We've separated them into nodes under NuGet, so you see all your NuGet packages. You can see your project references. You can even see your framework references here. Now notice I should mention that this project is using a data library that's built on Entity Framework Core, which is built on top of the .NET Standard library. As Scott mentioned, basically anything that uses the .NET Standard, I can use this library across .NET implementations. So I could use this in a WP app, in a WPF app, even in a Xamarin application. It's not limited just to .NET Core. All right, so using the UI is fun, and I like UIs. But if you like to stay in the code zone, we can actually just edit this file directly. So I'm going to take this package out. So I'm just going to cut it out. And once I save, keep your eye on the NuGet node here. And what it's going to do is it's going to do a restore, and it will remove the package. All right? And then I'll go ahead. Yeah, awesome. Then I'll go ahead and add it back in, and then you'll see it restoring again. All right, so this means no more do you ever have to unload and reload your projects. All right? This keeps everything in sync. All right, that's cool. All right. Like I mentioned, I still like to, use the UI. So don't worry, never fear. The NuGet package manager is still here. Hey, that rhymed. So I'm going to browse for, NuGet packages. Like maybe I, take a look. Hey, what NuGet packages do we have? Let's take a look at Application Insights. Notice Application Insights now is supported in .NET Core applications. Application Insights provides powerful telemetry data collection and tools to monitor health on your web apps and services. And now that we have this in .NET Core. So normally I would just add the package here and start coding away, right? But Application Insights involves a little bit more setup. You got to add some scripts. You need a telemetry key. There's a little bit more things involved. Luckily, Visual Studio 2017 comes to the rescue. I can use what's this new node called Connective Services, add a connected service. Now, connected services, there will be different services listed depending on what types of apps you build, and there's a bunch of different types of services. For .NET Core, I'm going to just go ahead and add Application Insights. All right, so notice this has like a new setup experience for App Insights. It's a little bit more friendly, and it kind of explains to you what's going to happen. Now, by default, it asks you, hey, let's collect the data into Azure. And let's start with just a free 1 GB a month, okay, included. Now, if you don't want to put your data in Azure, you don't have to. You can just add the SDK and run this locally, okay? It's total free. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put this into an existing App Insights resource, but you could obviously set one up here as well. Because I've been running some telemetry, and it's a little bit more interesting if we have some data. So what's happening now is it's adding the NuGet package. You'll see it pop into the NuGet list there. It's configuring some scripts, and it's adding a telemetry key for me. All right. Now, the only last thing I need to do is, because we migrated this project, I just need to go into the middleware pipeline here and just use application insights. All right. So now I probably should publish the application so that we can start collecting some real-time data here. So let's go up here and publish our app. Now you'll notice we have a new publishing experience here. We can publish to an Azure App Service, which is a perfect place for us to host web applications like this. So I'm going to select an existing app service that I already have. OK, and I'm going to select one here that got it going. All right, so what this is going to do now is it's going to kick off a release build, which is really cool, because I always forgot to switch to the release build. And then it's going to publish the app into Azure. When it's done, it will open a browser. All right, here's our app. OK, cool. So now we've got this published. All right, actually, I hit the website a couple of times. Let's go take a look at our application insights here. And I'm going to let's take a look at the last 7 days. I mentioned that I had this running on a previous app that we had. All right, so Application Insights is now showing us all of this performance information about our availability and the request response times and that sort of thing. We can drill in, get the response codes, figure out exactly what was happening, even from where the response came from and how long it took. We can even create a new issue right from here, right into Visual Studio Team Services. All right, so with all of this data here, it's kind of hard to kind of sift through it. So what I'm going to do is just explore the trends. And what this will do is just pinpoint any anomalies here. Notice the red. That means it's really the requests are failing. And I can actually even monitor the performance right here. So it's super simple to just get set up with any connected service, particularly Application Insights. There's really no reason why you shouldn't be using this on your web applications. So you guys really should use it, and definitely install and download Visual Studio 2017 today. Thank you.
All right, and I just want to say, I want to make sure we get this heard. I want to double click on what Beth said, that the .NET Core tooling is 1.0 today. So if you've been waiting, this is the day. Make it happen. You can go check it out. We worked very hard to get that domain, .net. Huge amount of work. Not really at all. And you can go check that out. You can also, of course, if you're not getting Visual Studio 2017, you can get the standalone download of the Core SDK for your Linux or your Mac machine. So check it out. Now, let's explore some microservices, because we talked about this new lightweight modular framework. It works really great for microservices. Now, the question is why, right? Well, the traditional approach, the approach that I grew up on, was kind of a monolithic app, possibly a layered app, depending on how complicated you were going to be. You might break it apart into individual tiers. You had domain-specific functionality. You had functional layers like web and biz and data. And you would technically and usually deploy it as a single unit. It was a big deal. We would go and deploy quarterly. And if we were amazing, we would deploy monthly. With a microservices approach, we want to spread that functionality out into smaller, independent services. And then those services can be developed, be deployed, and most importantly, be scaled independently. Okay? So then you can continue to grow those implementations and then scale out and scale out and scale out. And microservices and containers will not only give you reliable deployments, but really flexible scale both up and out. You can say the shopping cart's really popular today, we're going to need a lot more of those. And we know the profile service is working extra hard, we're going to need to scale that both up and out and give that additional resources. When you do microservices and containers, for example, you might have a web app on the front end, and it talks to a bunch of container-based back-end microservices. They might be written in different languages. They might be built by different teams in different locations all over the world. But you don't want to think about that. Now, with Visual Studio 2017, we're going to make it easy to both build and deploy containers. And we're going to integrate all of that with VSTS and Azure, and then give you containers that you understand that you can work with across that full DevOps lifecycle. This is going to enable you to kind of integrate this work across any size dev team. That means one person could have a multi-container solution, or a huge team with heterogeneous development lifecycle and styles can do that as well. We're going to make it so you can connect to things like the Azure Container Service and then deploy and orchestrate these applications across multiple containers really easily. Now, let's take a look at how easy it is to build and deploy Docker solutions with 2017. I'm going to go ahead and just introduce myself, so allow myself to introduce myself. Hey, Scott, good job. Thanks, Scott. You look doing a great job. All right, so I'm going to go here to my 2017, and I'm going to open up this first individual bike sharing campaign website. This is an ASP.NET Core application. This came from File New, and we built it up, and we built a bunch of work in it. And I'm going to go and right-click on this, and I'm going to say Add Docker Support. Now, traditionally, you might say, oh, there's this magical button that you click, and then Microsoft hides everything from you. Not in this case. In Visual Studio 2017, we do make things easy on the front end, but we also want to make it so people who understand what's going on underneath can really experience that. We're not hiding the Docker file from you. You can edit and change this as much as you want. We've even gone farther, and we've created a separate individual project called Docker Compose. And within that, we have both a continuous integration Docker Compose that allows you to do a build within one container and a deploy to another, so you have optimized containers. But then additional overrides, debugs, and releases. And we're integrating this in VS in a really natural way so that people who are comfortable in VS will like this experience. So for example, when this is the startup project, I can go and run this on Windows with IIS Express. But when my Docker Compose is the startup project, we can go and run that in Docker. So I'm going to go and hit that button, and what we're going to do is automatically do all the things you would ordinarily do from the command line in Docker. You can actually learn Docker by watching how Visual Studio talks to Docker, which is a pretty great way to do it. So we're firing this up right now. You notice down in the corner there, in the lower right corner, we have our Docker whale, and I've got now on localhost 32,773 running in Docker. Notice that IIS Express is not involved. That's talking to that Docker container. Now that's exciting and interesting, but let's do this. Let's go back over to 2017. We'll do some of Casey's Control-T, and I'll type in index, and I'll go down here. And let's search for Seattle, which I guess the Bike 360 is going to, and that sucks. They're going to go to Portland. So I'm still debugging, and I'm going to hit save. Okay, I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to hit refresh. Yeah. So we're debugging that Docker container. We're doing that interactive experience, but I changed a Razor file, and I hit refresh. We've actually done a volume mapping, so we can see that source code. We've punched a hole from Docker universe into our universe and allowed them to see each other, which is pretty fantastic. And let's switch over here and then turn off debugging and say we'll ship that. Since we're going to deface the website by adding Portland, we might as well ship it right away. Beth showed how you can publish to Azure App Service. You can do that for Windows. You can do that to a virtual machine. But here, because we're using a Docker file, we can tell Azure we're going to be using Linux in Azure. So the Docker file is now the item of composability. We're sending that Docker file up to Azure, and we're going to deploy it to a Linux-based Azure App Service. The way we're going to do that is we're going to send it up to an Azure container registry and then pull it back down into Azure, which is great. I'm going to right-click, hit Publish, come here, say App Service Linux. Because I'm just determined to get myself fired, I have stolen Steve Lasker's computer, and we're using his internal system here, so I'm sure he probably won't mind if I use all his money up in Azure. And the container registry that we're going to be using is going to be an Azure Container Registry. We're going to publish this up to our private personal one. This isn't going to the public Docker Hub. Our source code and our binaries are all secured. I'm going to hit Create, and we're going to start that deployment there. It's going to go up to an app service plan that speaks Linux. We'll send the Docker file up there. You see that right there? Docker is going and sending that up to the repository. You can see some layers existed and some layers didn't. Again, we're not hiding anything from you. This isn't a magic black box. You can do this from the command line if you want to. We've sent that up into an Azure website, just like Beth did, except this time we used Docker. And then we'll see that launch. And there's our application up there. And done. So that's cool. But how could it be cooler? Let's do this. Let's close this solution and let's open up a multi-container solution. We know that we can have different references to different NuGet packages. What about having references to other Docker containers? We talked about how you could have Docker containers with different languages. Each one of these projects is itself something that could be composed in Docker. So these are the individual microservices, and here's our Docker compose. We've now expanded our application. We have the original campaign, but we've added stuff to it. Now we have a microservice that does email, we have one that does feedback, and a profile API, each one of those all expressed in this Docker compose. And again, we've got overrides, debugs, and releases, as well as a continuous integration build. So then, what could we do? Let's go and hit F5 again. Bring up all of these at the same time. There's Docker Compose. Now it's running. I'm going to jump out to the command line because I want to see what's really happening. Look at that. So there are 5 Docker containers, all brought up by me hitting F5 in Visual Studio. And now they're all running on my machine here, and those are all talking to each other. So I'll go in here and I'll say, email me. I forgot to add Portland to there. I should do that. I'll say when it comes to Barcelona, let me know, and I'll hit submit. And now I'm in a breakpoint. So I'm in a breakpoint in my web application. Before, we saw me change a Razor file and hit F5, and it changed. Now I'm on a Windows machine talking to Docker that's running on my same Windows machine that's running in a Linux VM, and I'm done remote Docker Linux debugging to that Docker container. But I'm going to hit continue. Now I'm on the profile API. The campaign website just called the other one, and I have now done cross multi-container debugging all within Visual Studio. What's nice about this is it gives me that experience that I expect, that I'm used to in Visual Studio, without changing the way that I'm using these new modern tools like Docker and Docker Compose. And then I could go and put that into an orchestration service, and things could get even more cool and interesting. Pretty fantastic stuff, eh? But it would be even cooler if I could, next to the application insights that Beth used, click on continuous delivery. And we're going to grab our container service, and there's our container registry. We're going to send that up there, and I'm going to hit OK. And what this is going to do is it's going to go and configure all the resources in VSTS to do continuous build delivery of my individual Docker stuff. So gone are the days where, well, it works on my machine, but it doesn't work on this machine. It doesn't work quite right in production. We're all running the same containers. I'm going to have not only those containers built up in the cloud, but we're going to have the cloud build them in their own containers, or even run unit tests in their own containers. And then the resulting optimized containers can then be deployed however I want. So now I can go out here, look at those build definitions. And check this out. There's my, put it in the build repository, run the unit test, build the images, publish the test results. It's integrated in that experience, and I can go and add other things, bring in partners, Octopus Deploy, whatever makes me happy. You pick the tools, you use them the way that makes you happy. It's all available in Visual Studio 2017. Thank you, Me. You were great. Now, I just got a couple more things to announce before we get our next speaker on stage. I know it's sometimes hard with new technology. You see demos like this. We work very hard to make it look easy. I know you wish sometimes that it would go bad and you'd see me sweat. But we put a lot of work into this, and what we've done is we put together for you a microservices reference application, and we're going to make it public for the first time today. You can get it at aka.ms/microservices architecture. We're going to invite you, the community, to give us some feedback. Okay, so it's not 100% right now, but we think that this is a pretty great way to say, here's a decent prescription for a .NET Core microservices reference app. It's going to have both the services architected with best practices and both mobile and web clients on the front end included. Totally supported inside of 2017. All you need is Visual Studio 2017 and Docker and the .NET CLI, and you can try this out on Mac, Linux, or Windows. So please, aka.ms/microservices architecture, and give us some feedback. All right? Now, one other thing I want to talk about is we've got this free program called Visual Studio Dev Essentials that we've talked about. Now, they've got 1.4 million members and counting, and I wanted them to put up a screenshot of all the free stuff that you get when you sign up for this. You get all kinds of tools and services and software and training. Some of my favorites, of course, are like the free Azure credit. It's $300 a year. You get SQL Server Developer Edition, which is, has a governor on it, but has all the features that they have on the Enterprise Edition. And you get training at both Xamarin University and Pluralsight. And then today, we're going to also add Opsgility's 3 free months of both Azure and DevOps training. So you can put together great Azure and DevOps-based solutions like this. So that's pretty fantastic stuff. Now, because this launch is a multi-day launch, I also want to call out on day 2, tomorrow, some great training options. We've got some partners like Treehouse, we've got LinkedIn Learning and others, so be sure to watch those and experience those. So Julia talked about our 20-year anniversary of Visual Studio this year, but we have another far more important anniversary that I want to bring my friend and colleague Miguel de Icaza up to talk about.
Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. So it's been a year.
It has been a very intense and very enjoyable first year at Microsoft.
Have we changed you? Are you running Windows?
I am running Windows. And it's been fantastic. We've gotten all the resources that you can get from Microsoft. Mm-hmm. But I think that we're bringing to Microsoft our passion for great apps and our passion for .NET and kind of spreading the message around to every other team. So it's been very good. It's been very good.
That's great. Well, congratulations on a year, and I will let you take it from here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Scott. Like I said, we've been very busy in this past year, and we've launched a number of products and added a number of features that all of our users wanted to have. There's a few things that I want to talk about. The first one is that when the acquisition was completed, we added Xamarin to Visual Studio, and that means that every Visual Studio developer since last year has been able to target Android and iOS with native user experiences out of the box. And that has driven a major adoption to our product, and it means that we've grown a very healthy community of people using the products, not only using the products, but contributing to our communities. We also announced last year the open sourcing of all of Xamarin's SDKs. And we began with baby steps, taking maybe some fixes for some patches for little fixes, some small little features, and that has gone throughout the year. But most importantly, it has enabled a few large players to make some very bold investments on the platform. I want to talk about 2 of those. You've probably heard of Unity, a very popular game engine that developers use to create games for multiple platforms. So Unity has now been able to adopt the latest version of .NET and the latest versions of the compilers, and they're adding it to their product, something that could have not been done before. So that is something that we're very proud of, and we're working very closely with Unity to make this happen. The other very large event that took place last year was that Samsung themselves have adopted .NET as the foundation, the platform that they're using for their Tizen operating system. Tizen is an operating system that Samsung is using on their TVs. It's an operating system that they're using on their watches. It's an operating system that they're using on their refrigerators, toasters, anything with a screen or an LCD, they're putting Tizen on it. And .NET is the developer platform that you use to target this. So you get high performance, swift, beautiful code. And the user interface that they're going to use across the board is Xamarin Forms. So they took our Xamarin Forms project that we open source completely, and they've ported it over to Tizen. So the native UI experience on Tizen is entirely based on Xamarin Forms. Now, we have been incredibly lucky of working with the .NET team and the Visual Studio team because we're big fans of these teams. We've admired the teams for many years. And one of the things that makes me the most proud is our launch last year, at the end of the year, of the preview for Visual Studio for Mac. Today, we're launching the 4th preview of Visual Studio for Mac. The idea is that we want to have an IDE for developers that are building mobile applications and cloud applications, and to do everything from the Mac with a UI that is completely native, is not an alien application. We've basically taken the experience that developers want from Visual Studio and we've adapted it to the world of the Mac. So it's a completely native application with the features that people expect. And the idea is we want to make it simple for developers to build their cloud backends, their ASP.NET backends, .NET Core backends on the Mac and move between Windows and Mac machines. And they'll be able to do mobile applications as well. So it's a mobile-first, cloud-first IDE, and we invite everybody to test this new IDE and to help us have a great product for our final launch. We're here to talk about what Visual Studio 2017 does for mobile. So let's talk a little bit about this. To me, what we want to help you do is create 5-star applications, right? We want to help you build great applications on mobile. And we want to support you from the conception, right? When you first have your idea, through the development and to your launch, and how do you manage that launch. On the development side, you've seen a lot of features that you can leverage today from Visual Studio, the new C# 7 features, all of these testing capabilities, all these IDE refactoring features. And then we've noticed that a lot of developers are really building connected applications. So when you build a mobile applications, many times you're going to want to have a backend. And while there's a beautiful set of backends that you can use, we're making it very easy for you to consume things like Azure Document DB and Active Directory and other capabilities like that. And at the end of the spectrum, like Scott was mentioning, we want to support you in the final stages of your product launch. So how do you measure how your users are using your application, what kind of things they're using more or less, crashes in your applications, and help you roll out these applications. So we have an entire DevOps capability that we're delivering to you as part of the Visual Studio family. Now, let's talk about, in particular, the things that are very close to my heart, which is building 5-star applications. For us, what matters the most about a 5-star application is you want to create applications that your users enjoy using, right? You want people to like to use your application, enjoy using your application. The last thing that you want is for your users to dread using the application. Some of you, I'm not going to say who, might have had an experience with an expense filing application, right? And you end up basically saying, you know what, I'll just deal with this when I get to the computer, or I'll ask somebody in the office that knows how to use that thing to help me do that. So you don't want to do that. You want to have great applications, things that keep your users engaged. You want to extend the reach of your business by having an app that people feel very happy to use. And from the developer perspective, there's 3 elements that we think are key for building a 5-star application. So those are, you want to have a native user interface. So you want your application to use the native controls. You want it, when the operating system changes, you want your application to go along for the ride. You want every behavior, every animation to be the right time. If the OS changes the color of the white, which has happened a number of times, white is not actually always white, you want that white to be picked up in your application, right? So that is very important, having a native user interface. The second component is you want to have access to every single API of the platform. Android, iOS, and Windows are very, very rich platforms. And the vendors of all these operating systems constantly add new capabilities. So one of the things that we're very proud of Xamarin of doing is that we always support the new releases of iOS and Android on the day of the launch. So whenever Apple releases their new operating system or Google releases their operating system, we have every API supported in there for you. And this matters because that means that you can have your applications light up with new capabilities on launch day. So we'll be there for you during the beta process, and we'll be there for you on your launch date. So this is very important. And the third piece is performance. And I've always said that performance is a feature. And this to me is very meaningful because the way that you interact with the app and the way that you behave is greatly different from a slow application to a fast application. If you have a fast application, you adjust the application every time that you need it for something. You'll take notes quickly. And then you start to rely on that app for notes, or you'll start to rely on that app for your financial transactions, right? If it's fast, you'll come to rely on the app. If it's slow, your users will just avoid it completely. So we do a lot of work to make sure that your application has the performance that you need. So it's not only about, well, it's fast. Well, that is nice, but it also means that your users will interact with your app in a different way. And also, they'll thank you because you're not going to be burning their battery, right? We're going to run as fast as possible. We're using the LLVM optimizing compiler to do the final pass in your code. And like I said, you don't want to waste your users' battery time. So let's take a look at one of our customers that just built an app using Xamarin.
British Airways, it's one of the best-known brands in aviation. We have about 40,000 employees. But it can be quite a difficult bunch of people to reach.
We had our new CEO come in, Alex Cruz, and he wanted to make sure he could get his message across to everyone wherever they were.
All of the information was spread across multiple different sources.
They have to use a number of logins. We had a number of senior employees who do have British Airways issued equipment, but the vast majority of them don't have those. We wanted to make a level playing field in that sort of sense, and creating the app is the platform to do that.
Many of our apps in the recent past have been built on the iOS platform as a default platform, but we've had trouble moving it to other platforms.
We used Microsoft Visual Studio 2017 to develop a Xamarin Forms app that gives us 95% code reuse across all of the platforms that we were targeting, which was iOS, Android, and Windows Phone. Visual Studio Team Services and Xamarin Test Cloud particularly allowed us to iterate quickly through several releases of the application because we were able to check as we went along that our tests were still passing and the product was still robust enough to deploy, and we were able to add extra features quickly without worrying about lengthy regression tests. For our back-end services, we use Azure Application Services and also Azure SQL Database to provide the data resources to the application and to provide integration with our other back-end systems. To achieve single sign-in for the application, we have federated across from Azure Active Directory to our Oracle Access Management.
And that was fantastic. That was the equivalent of putting a very old car on the moon.
It feels like a great achievement to know that they're finding a better experience.
It's working really well for us, and we hope that this is the beginning of a very fruitful relationship.
Well, that was a great video of how British Airways used Xamarin to reach every mobile device, and they did it in a record time. It's been a pleasure working with them. Now, let's talk about what we have in store for Xamarin developers on Visual Studio 2017. So these are some of the features that are shipping today with the Xamarin release. And instead of talking about these things and going through every one of those, I want to invite my friend James Montemagno to come and show you these features live. James?
Hey everyone, how's it going? Yes! Woo! That's what I'm talking about. I love Xamarin. I love Visual Studio. My new favorite feature, look at this installer. Look at this when I go down. First option, Xamarin, boom. We made it drop dead simple to get Xamarin on your machine. Number one for under mobile and gaming, you choose .NET Development, Xamarin, everything that you need for cross-platform native development with Xamarin. That's the first step, right? Now, once you have it installed, I want to show you kind of the experience that we're setting up here. So inside of Visual Studio 2017, I have all my projects, some things that I already have open. When I click on this More Project template, it brings up your standard kind of dialog box for new projects. When you have Xamarin installed, you have Android applications like Android Wear applications. Under iOS, you have Apple Watch, iPad, iPhone applications. And what's really cool is that with Xamarin, it's more than just phones and tablets. We have support for Apple TV, for like tvOS applications and watchOS applications, everything that you need. We realized that we wanted to make it really simple, though, if you were building a single application or a full cross-platform application. So under cross-platform, you're going to see this cross-platform app. And you can see its Xamarin Forms are native. So let me go ahead and tap on that. You're going to get this brand new dialog box where you can select between a blank application or a master detail, kind of an item to-do list application to kind of scaffold out everything that you need. Now, what's really cool is when I zoom in, we can see that the UI technology is either Xamarin Forms or native. So if I select native, I get those iOS storyboards, Android XML, XAML for my UWP applications. I can select how I want to share code. But what's really cool is that we can also just say, give me a Xamarin Forms application, which is our cross-platform user interface. I build everything in XAML and get native UIs at the end of the day. So that's my front end, but my back end of my application is we realize that a lot of developers, like Miguel was saying, need a great back end. So we made it super simple to add an ASP.NET application, full back end leveraging Azure mobile apps. Just select host in the cloud. That's it. And now, let me zoom out. There we go. When I hit OK, it'll automatically go out, connect to my app service, go to my Azure account, and get everything ready for me that I possibly need. Assign a few variables here, hit create, and it'll basically scaffold out an entire application. It takes a few seconds, so I've already done that ahead of time. Let me show you what that looks like. Basically, I've created an application that says My Items. And what's really nice here is that this is the application structure. I get a full backend, all my controllers, models, everything that I need. I get a portable class library with all my services to connect automatically to Azure, my view models, all my MVVM framework, all of my views of my application. And then down at the bottom, I still have my Android, iOS, and Windows 10 application. That means that if anytime I want to access a native feature, I can go into iOS or Android and add it there. But all of this code has been generated for me automatically. It gets me ready for mobile development instantly. So let me again show you what this looks like, though, because it's kind of better to see the app live. So I'm going to pull up Android and Windows 10 here. And we have this kind of master detail. We get a UWP look and feel over here. We have some toolbar items, nice material tabs over here on Android. I can come in and say, add a new item and say, VS 2017 is the best yet. We'll leave the typos in there, because why not? And then boom, it adds it automatically. It's down here in the bottom. I can go ahead and hit refresh. I can hit refresh on here. It goes out to my database, and it did a full round trip up to Azure instantaneously and synchronized that with full online-offline data synchronization. I didn't have to write a line of code. We scaffolded it all for you. Pretty awesome. But we're missing something on the screen. As we can see, there's a blank screen over there. Let's fill it up with something. I'm missing iOS, so I have my iOS project right here. Up in my debug menu, you can see I'm connected to my Mac, so I have all my iOS simulators, everything like that. All I have to do is hit debug, and it'll automatically go out, remote compile up my application, and now it'll actually launch my iOS simulator right on Windows. There's my application on all three beautiful native user interfaces for each, synchronized with Azure mobile apps on the back end. Let me show you a little bit of how I kind of created this application. So if I go in, we can see over in my, my shared code here, I have all my back-end services like Azure, view models, and then maybe I want to kind of modify this new item page here. So I can come in and I have the label and entry. This is the Xamarin Form XAML. I can come in and add a switch. We have really rich IntelliSense right out of the box. I can say is toggled equals true. I'll put that in there. And I can save it. I can redeploy it, and I'm kind of good to go. But it'd be really great if I could just kind of see this application kind of running and modify the UI live. That's where our brand new Xamarin Forms previewer comes in. Let me go ahead and bookmark that right there. Enabling me to see my iOS and Android applications for Xamarin Forms rendered live. So that hello world, that doesn't look correct. So let me just go ahead and say enter title. Boom. And it updates live, and my application is running right inside of the previewer. Now, let's say I'm actually in a debug session here. I set my Android as my startup again, and I go ahead and deploy it to my Android simulator. Often in development, I'm going out, I'm writing code, I'm deploying it, I'm writing some more code, I'm deploying it, I'm going back and forth and back and forth. So often, what I want to just be able to do is say, hey, listen, I'm inside of Visual Studio 2017 using all the brand new fancy features, but I'm running my application, and maybe I want to change some logic. So we have our application in debug mode here. It's going to go off. It's going to synchronize with Azure. There we go. And I can hit add item. Maybe I really don't like that this, title and description, maybe that white isn't, You know, I want it to be blue or something like that. So I'd have to go and I have to make all these changes. What if I could just do it live? With the Xamarin Inspector, I can just hit this Live Inspect button. When I tap on that, it's going to launch the Xamarin Inspector. There it is. It's actually going to create a live session connected to my Android emulator. So it's going to prepare. I have a full REPL, so I can actually write code, inject code into my application. What I really like is the live view, which is going to go out, make that connection, and then actually visualize my application live, giving me a full layout of everything in my app. It's way better than that, though. When I go in, we actually have a brand new Xamarin Forms view. So that actually gives me that nice compressed view. And I was showing this to Scott earlier, and he goes, why I can't see anything anymore? And I go, well, that's because the background is actually transparent. So that's not cool. So when I go ahead and tap on the stack layout, let's change that background color. So when I tap on it, it's going to go out and give us a full property grid here. So all the properties that Xamarin Forms control. Now what I can do is I can just come over and I can start modifying these sliders and say, let's adjust that alpha, maybe change this color, and actually renders my application live. I'll say that's not a good color, but we'll say that's the best color ever. I can go ahead and refresh that view and it goes out and we can see the brand new color in our view. So I can see the layers, I can find performance issues, I can see if things are off the screen, take those changes, put them back in the application. I don't have to stop debugging to work on my application. So you saw kind of the out-of-the-box connected experiences, but with Xamarin, we really can create full fidelity, beautiful applications, taking advantage of all the great features of iOS, Android, and Windows. So I wanted to show the bike rider application. We've been talking about bike sharing. I wanted to talk about an application that the riders would use when they go and reserve their bikes. So let me go ahead and launch it here. I have it on Windows right there, have it on iOS over here, and then I have it right here on Android. This is a really beautiful application that's going out. It's finding my weather. It's actually finding the events in my area. So a big Seattle Sounders fan right here. I can go see, oh, do I want to go rent a bike and go over there? Or maybe I'll go in and do a new ride over here. This is going to go out, and we've updated over here towards Seattle. So we actually have all the different points on the map. We have beautiful Bing Maps. If I go over here into Apple Maps, I can say new ride. We're getting that really rich user interface on each platform. So I can go in and I want to say, oh, I want to go over here towards Portage Bay, book that ride. It's really stunning. It's a really beautiful application, getting that native user interface, beautiful animations on all three platforms. Now, what's really unique about this application is how we built it. It's an actually open source application, everything that you're seeing here. What I'm actually showing here is some native animations, but everything is here inside of XAML. This application was actually built 100% with Xamarin Forms, with 95% of code shared between iOS, Android, and Windows. So all of our models, our backend services, integrations with everything is all right here. All of our data services, everything. It's amazing. What's really, yeah, it's awesome. You can grab this application from GitHub, write it out yourself, see how it looks. And what's really nice is we still have Android, iOS, and Windows down here, but look at this wearable section. Because with Xamarin, again, it's more than phones and tablets. TV, Tizen support, anything you want. But we also have watchOS support for the Apple Watch. So we actually have this application running right here. I want to show it to you really quick. So you come up, you get a good view up here on the screen. So if I come up here and actually tap on the icon to get into the applications, we can actually see the bike rider application right there. It goes off, it talks to my iPhone. I can say I want to go from the Burt Gilman right here, or Children's Hospital, over to here. There we go. And I pull in full map support, so I can book a ride right from my watch. Awesome. So with Xamarin, it's all about native user interfaces, native APIs, native performance. Truly anything that you could do in Objective-C, Swift, or Java, you can do it in C# inside of Visual Studio. I've been doing so for over 6 years, and I simply absolutely love it, and I know that you will love it too. But even I know that there's more than just building applications as a developer. We need to worry about, how do we deploy it? How do we get analytics? How do we monitor our application in real time? And that's why I want to invite my very good friend, Keith Ballinger, up on stage to talk about all the amazing services we have here.
Thanks, James. Well, building applications with Xamarin is truly a pleasure. But as you know, mobile development at times can be complicated. There are many dozens of different active operating system versions that your users are using. There is thousands of form factors, and even the network itself may change from Edge to 4G to Wi-Fi during a single user's session. So in order to handle this complexity, what you need are a set of services that help you build your app and make it amazing. You need to be able to automatically test and ensure that what you've built is at the quality standard that you need. You need to be able to distribute your build to beta testers, to your corporate app store, or even the public stores in an automated, seamless fashion. And you need to be able to do all of this from a single pull request. Now, we have customers who've stitched together various services that Microsoft offers to enable this ability. But we've put these all together into a single flow that allows you, the developer, to focus on building your app and not these other DevOps workflows. And we call this Visual Studio Mobile Center. It is a mission control for your application, and it lets you have continuous integration and delivery for your mobile application so that you can focus on that. Now, Visual Studio Mobile Center works with any kind of mobile application, whether you've used Xcode and Swift, or Android Studio in Java, or Xamarin with C#. And we also support React Native as well. So let's go and have a look at a demo of Mobile Center. As you see here, this is the login page, and I'm here because I wanted to kind of highlight a couple things. One is you can log into Mobile Center with your Microsoft account. You can use your username and password that you're used to using from Hockey App, but you can also log in with GitHub. Now we'll move over to a logged in version of Mobile Center, and I just want to show you how you can create a new app. One of the things you'll see with Mobile Center is, besides supporting iOS and Android, we have Windows coming soon, but again, whether you're using Objective-C, React Native, or Xamarin, we support all of these various ways of building a mobile application. So let's pop into the Bike Rider application. And I want to highlight right off the start how we allow you to get started very quickly. So when you start a new application, we will show you, hey, here's the CocoaPods or the NuGets in this specific instance that you can add to your application to enable Mobile Center functionality. In this case, both analytics and crash reporting are a single line of code. Now, after you've started building your application, you're going to want to distribute it to your beta testers, for instance, and that's what our distribution feature lets you do. You can see there's a group for your collaborators, the other developers you're working with this application on. In this case, we've set up an alpha team and beta testers. And if I go into the alpha team, I can see my history of releases and who is being distributed these beta builds. And if I want to, I could distribute a new build simply by uploading the IPA and dragging and dropping it into the surface. Additionally, Mobile Center has a complete set of REST APIs and a command line interface that you can use to do everything you're seeing visually here. So I could, if I wanted to, upload this build using the command line tool. Now, alternatively, we have a build service in Mobile Center, and this build service is built on top of Visual Studio Team Services, and it lets you build your mobile applications very easily with very little work. And in this case, you can see all of the branches of my application are already here. I can click into the Seattle branch, which we use for Bike Rider, and we can see various recent commits. I can go into one of these. I can get information about how long the build took. I can look at the build logs themselves. Now, I can also look at the configuration and adjust this as needed. And here you can see I'm choosing the solution to use, which configuration. I'm saying I want to build on every push, or I could just do it manually as I wanted to. Whether I want to build for simulators, and of course, I can upload both my provisioning profile and my certificate to get a signed build. And I want to point out here, we can then automatically distribute these builds. And in this case, you can see I'm automatically distributing them to my alpha team. And all of this just works. Now, if my build is working for each commit that's coming in, I also need to test. With all of the various form factors that we have in the mobile world, you want to be able to have confidence that the application both behaves and looks correctly for those users. And that's what the test service based on Xamarin Test Cloud gives us. We have a data center of real-world devices, thousands of them in both iOS and Android, that you can use to run automated UI tests as part of this CI/CD workflow. And here we can see I can get a quick graph of how much memory I'm using across my test runs, how many test runs are going on. Let's pop into a test run from a few days ago, and I can see how many tests passed. Looks like I'm still working out a feature. And if I click in there, I can see this grid of all of my devices that I ran this test on, and I can visually inspect them and see what they look like. We can click through each step of the way. And if I want to pop into one of these, I can see more details. I can see the logs themselves, all of these things to kind of help me have confidence that the mobile application that I'm building is going to work for my users. Now, besides just CI/CD, we also offer several other cloud services for mobile developers. Two that are very important are around crash reporting and analytics. The whole point of shipping quickly by having this automated build, test, distribute pipeline is so that I can learn from my customers very quickly. And one of the most important things I need to learn is about the quality of my application. Is it crashing? How often is it crashing? What are those bugs people are running into so that I can catch them before everybody else does, and then very quickly go through that build, test, release pipeline again and update for everybody. So here you can see the crash service for Mobile Center. We can see how many people are crash-free, how many crashes I'm seeing. We group together common crashes, and I can go into those, and I have this very nice syntax highlighting showing me exactly where this crash is occurring, and I can go further and look at each individual crash report that I'm seeing. Now, besides just what bugs people are running into, the other thing that I, as a developer of a mobile application, care about is how are people using my application? And that's what our analytics service provides for us. So for instance, we can see things like our active users, both in the last week and the last day. We can see what our top devices are. In this case, you can see that Bike Rider's top device is the iPhone 6S. I can see how often sessions are happening. I can see where in the world my users are using my application and, for instance, what language they're using, and even the popularity of each device. Now, I get all of this for free with just that one line of code that I've added to my application. But if I want to go further, I may want to understand how individual features are being used. And that's where our custom events feature works. And custom events, again, is just one line of code for each of these events. So we have the book ride functionality in the Bike Rider application. And here we can see how many users are booking rides, how often each user is doing it, how often during a session they're booking a ride. But then I have some additional information that I added to say, how did this user determine they want to book a ride? Was it from an event? Was it from a suggestion? Or did they just organically decide to do it? And you can see here, for instance, the organic version was the most popular version, a popular way to do this. And this is all very important intelligence that I, as a developer, really need to understand about my application to make it better. Well, if you've liked what you've seen, I'm happy to tell you that the Visual Studio Mobile Center preview is available today. With Visual Studio Mobile Center, we let developers focus on their app code, not on their ops. And we've made it as easy as possible to adopt, and we've tried to make sure that it's ready for enterprises. So if you'd like to try today, you can sign up at aka.ms/mobilecenter. Well, now we've talked about the specific mobile needs for DevOps, but we should talk about the broader DevOps story that is required that's not just limited to mobile. And for that, let's welcome Corporate Vice President Brian Harry to the stage. And he'll talk to us about how the Visual Studio product family enables DevOps for all developers. Brian, welcome to the launch event.
Thank you very much. All right, so I'm going to expand a bit more on DevOps, but I want to start, before I get too deep into it, just with a refresher. What is DevOps and why do we care? So DevOps fundamentally is a set of practices that are about helping me improve my development process and about helping me deliver more value to my customer more efficiently, to be more responsive to my customers' needs as they change, be able to react, be able to address competitive pressure, and be able to just build a better app and interact with my customer better. Fundamentally, that's what DevOps is about. Now, DevOps is a bunch of different practices, and I'm going to talk about a few of them, a few of the most important ones that we've been working on, particularly in our 2017 wave of products. First, I want to talk about continuous delivery. Continuous delivery is probably the centerpiece of DevOps practices, and it is about automating everything that happens from the time a developer checks in code until that code shows up in your customer hands and a smile on their face. That's fundamentally what DevOps is about. From managing your code review process, to automating your builds, to automating your testing, your deployment, your release management, and telemetry coming out of your application back to the developer. No DevOps process is worth its salt without being trustable and scalable. I mean, setting up DevOps for a trivial toy app, not incredibly hard. Where DevOps gets hard is real mission-critical apps at scale. Apps that can't ever go down. Apps that are built by teams of many developers with complex dependencies. And that's something we've been really focusing on, is real DevOps in real teams for real mission-critical apps. And we ourselves are a great example. We use our DevOps solution at Microsoft to build our products. Our DevOps solutions are used by teams of thousands of developers to help build things like Azure and Office and Windows. So when we say it's scalable, it is scalable to the most mission-critical products and the largest teams. Another critical practice is sort of changing the way you manage quality and testing. If you think you're going to achieve this rapid, continuous delivery by doing the things you've always done and just doing them faster, it's never going to work. You will never succeed. You have to rethink how you do things. And a big part of that is how you manage quality. You have to move away from that waterfall model of I'm going to design and then I'm going to develop and then I'm going to stabilize and then I'm going to integrate and then I'm going to system test and then I'm going to hand it off to production and whew, I can go back and start over. You have to become iterative in every aspect of that process. And we often call that shift left and shift right. Now, Scott talked a bit about shift left and how Visual Studio really helps you with shift left by pulling practices like testing with the live unit testing into the Visual Studio environment, making it part of that developer's inner loop. It's also important to think about shift right. No longer are you done when you hand off the app into the production environment and think, done with that one, move on to my next thing. You aren't. You are not. You have to move from a model of delivery as sort of an afterthought to production is part of the development process. You aren't done when you've delivered it to somebody to deploy. You are only done when the smile's on your customer's face. And you've got to hand babysit that through production, monitor the telemetry, understand that your users are being successful. We call that shift right, where the production becomes part of your development process responsibility. So the centerpiece, or the center of gravity of the DevOps solution at Microsoft are Team Foundation Server and Visual Studio Team Services. Visual Studio Team Services are our DevOps services in the cloud. They're always available anywhere you are. They're always up to date, highly reliable, backed up. We manage it all for you. Team Foundation Server is the same set of capabilities, but delivered in a product you can install yourself in your data center behind your firewall. You manage it, maximum control, but you're responsible for it. You have to keep it up to date. You have to patch it. You have to, back it up. All of that stuff. But they're two views of the same set of capabilities. In fact, it's the same code. Like it's one set of code that we build. We deliver it in the cloud as a service. We deliver it on-prem as an on-premises product. And today, we're announcing the next release of Team Foundation Server 2017 Update 1. It's only been, 4 months since we shipped Team Foundation Server 2017 at Connect, and already we're delivering Update 1. '17 had a ton of new stuff in it. And Update 1 brings a ton of more new stuff. Some examples, things like test impact analysis that helps me accelerate my testing by making sure that when I run my tests, I only run the tests that were affected by the code that changed. Or new pull requests experience that make my code reviews even more productive. New deployment and release management experiences like Docker support. In 2017, we released package management with NuGet support, and now in Update 1, we're adding NPM support, and we're going to continue. Maven's going to come next, and we'll keep going. So tons and tons of new value in only a few months. We've already started on Update 2. Update 2 is going to have even more. And lastly, a few years ago, the cloud was nothing but a twinkle in people's eye. It was a dream. It was an aspiration. And over the past few years, that has transitioned from aspiration to reality. And more customers I talk to are wanting to move to the cloud. And specifically, more and more TFS customers want to move to the cloud. They're saying, hey, managing a TFS server isn't our core business. Why don't you manage it for us? Let us focus on our core competency. And so about a year ago, we started working on a data import capability for Team Services that allows you to basically lift and shift all your TFS data transparently, move it to the cloud, and now suddenly you go home on a Friday afternoon, you come back to work. Home, I never leave work. You come back to work on Monday morning, and everything's good. All your data's there. And in the last year, as we've gradually, done crawl, walk, run, started in an early private preview and added sort of more and more preview customers, we've now onboarded 40,000 users through this import process, over hundreds of customers. And those include very big customers like Shell, Schlumberger, Blackbaud, and Microsoft itself, each with thousands of users. So it's a great simple path to move from on-premises to the cloud, and you can sign up by going to aka.ms/tfsimport to try it yourself. So now enough talk. I'm gonna sort of warm you up for a demo that we're gonna do. Team Foundation Server and Visual Studio are, as I said, the center of gravity of our DevOps solution. And we provide sort of a full lifecycle capability from planning through development, test, release, and telemetry. And I'm going to invite Donovan Brown to come up and show you how you can easily get started automating a full pipeline from check-in through deployment. Come on, Donovan.
When Brian told me what he wanted me to show you, I got so excited that the hair on my arms literally stood up, kind of like they are now. I wanted just to attack the stage. So for all of you who have an existing code base, who want to just rub a little DevOps on it and make it better, I'm going to show you how to do that right here, right now. So what I'm going to do is take you to my machine. And what we're going to see here is the welcome screen to Team Services. And what I want to do is quickly create a new project. When I create a project, it is creating everything that I need to turn an idea into a working piece of software. It's my work item tracking, my bug tracking, test case management, source control, package management, continuous integration, and continuous deployment for any language targeting any platform. And that is very important for you to understand. This is not your daddy's Microsoft. This is a Microsoft that knows Node.js and JavaScript, and it knows all those great languages that we have out there. Now, what it's looking for now is some code. Now, if you're anything like me, I hate paying for stuff that I can get for free. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to import my Git repo from somewhere else into Team Services, where I get unlimited private repos for free. So all my data life is exactly the same. It's just a little cheaper now. I get to use all the Git tools that I know and love, all the Git commands that I know and love, but it's exactly the same thing for free. Now, what I want to do here, I've been a developer for about 20 years. And I know that IDE, it's almost like the instrument that we play. It's very personal to us. And what's really nice about Visual Studio Team Services is that when I go to clone my repo, I can still use the IDE that I use today. We're not forcing you to change what you do every day. We're bringing this value directly to you in the IDE of your choice, okay? Now, another thing I want to do is show you how Team Services, it guides you through that DevOps journey that we're all on together. It recognizes that I have a Git repo, but I don't have a build yet. So it's going to actually tell me, hey, why don't I help you set up a build? So it's actually going to help me build the code that I just pulled in from my repository. Here you see a huge collection of templates. And as you can see here, we know mobile, we know Xcode, Xamarin, Cordova, Android, Jenkins, Maven, Node.js, ASP.NET Core. The list is amazing. If you do not see your language here, don't worry. We can build that language too. Anything that you can do from a command line, you can do from our build system and from our release system. Period. The sky is the limit when you're using Visual Studio Team Services. The code I pulled in happens to be ASP.NET, so I'm going to go ahead and click Apply. I actually have an entire build system right now. There's nothing that I really have to do, but I'm in complete control. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and rename this. I'm going to go talk to you about our source here real quick. I did import my source from GitHub, but if for whatever reason you need to leave it in GitHub, or you need to leave it in Bitbucket, or maybe you want to use Subversion, you can leave it there and still use all the power that we have in Team Services. Again, we're not forcing you to change what you do every day. Again, we do it for free, so you might want to consider that. Another thing that I want to show you is that we're constantly making improvements to Team Services, even to our tasks that we produce. For example, this one here with the flag is letting me know that I can preview some new features. Some of the features that Brian just mentioned to you, for example, the fact that we have test impact analysis. When you start to adopt unit testing, you start to create a huge battery of tests that can sometimes take a long time to run. But by enabling this feature and saying only run tests that are impacted, we're using code coverage and test impact analysis to determine which tests need to be run based on the code changes you just made. This can reduce your build time drastically. Another thing that we can do is we can pick exactly what version of code that we want to build it again or test it against, which is Visual Studio 2017. I can also go out here and use multiple cores of my agent to run my test in parallel, even reducing my build time even further. And one of my favorite features is code coverage. This is going to allow me to make sure that every piece of code checked in actually has tests that are covering that piece of code. Just a few clicks, I've now configured my entire build. One other thing I'd like to do, though, is I want this to be continuous integration. That is the practice of where upon every check-in, the code is downloaded, compiled, tested, and packaged upon every single commit. And by simply checking this box here, I now have enabled continuous integration for my entire repository. One other thing that I want to go back in and look at are where do I want to build this particular product? We can build it natively on Mac, on Linux, and on Windows. And what I do is I simply choose which of these queues do I want to use. The hosted ones come out of the box. They're hosted for you in Azure, half of them running on Windows, the other on Linux. So you don't have to install anything to start building your application today. We also give you a default pool or queue where you can put in whatever agents that you want on whatever platform that you want. So now I can install additional tools on that agent and make sure I can build whatever it is that I want to build. Like I said before, the sky is the limit. So if I have a long-running build, I don't have to worry, did it stall or not? I can actually see in real time if it's still running. But while this build is running, I'm going to go back and show you some other cool things about our build system. One of which is our task library. Our task library is enormous. These are things that you get right out of the box. There's no plugins to install. There's no add-ins for you to actually go back and configure. We have Android, iOS. We have things for all sorts of different products and tools that you might be using. It became so large that we had to implement search. So if I were to go and look at Azure, you can see all the tasks that we have today that enable you to just effortlessly get your code into Azure, right? Very low friction, very easy for you to use, no matter what language it is that you're developing in. If you do not see the task here that you need, you can actually go to our marketplace. Our marketplace allows you to then go and peruse vendors who have created extensions that have additional build tasks, release tasks, widgets for dashboards, hubs. You'll see Docker support. You'll see things in here for Bower, other tools like Tomcat that you're going to be familiar with. You simply click on them, add them to your TFS or your VSTS account, and you instantly have this additional value. If you don't see what you want here, you can write it yourself. It's easier than you think. We've actually open sourced every single one of the ones that we've written ourselves so that you can go download those and use them as a template for what you're going to do earlier or later. If you know Node.js or you know PowerShell, you already know how to write these things, okay? It's very easy to do. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. And what I want to do now is talk about one other option that I like. We have variables which you can define both in your build and also inside of your release. These can be encrypted. So if you have an operations guy who has that sensitive password that no one else on your team is supposed to know, they can come and enter it here and lock that. It is encrypted at rest and it is also encrypted at flight. Once I save this, unchecking that padlock wipes out the value so that no one can see it but the person who put it in there. Okay, very secure system here. And this works for our build and for our release. Another option that I like is this one here. CI builds run very often, and some of them will fail. What happens too often is they fail and no one knows. It's like the tree that falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, right? Well, what I like about checking this box is we're going to hear it, and this bug is going to haunt that guy until he goes back and fixes the build. So we can also go back in here and we can set retention policies, and we can even monitor the history of changes that we make. So if I were to come over here and save this, and then come over here and put in a comment, you're going to see instantly that we can track the changes that I've made to my build definition. Okay, so none of this information is going to be lost. If your build starts to break, you can determine if it was the code or a change to the definition that caused that to actually break. By now, we should have had our build finished. So I'm going to go back over here to my summary. And here you can see that we have a build that's actually successfully finished. If I come over here, now I'm going to go to our build summary. Our build summary is this nice kind of heads-up display of everything that happened as part of that particular commit. So if I zoom in here, what we're going to be able to see is that I have some associated change sets that I've actually committed. Any work items or bugs that I was fixing would actually be associated here as well. So gone are the days of your QA person asking you, what build was that fixed in? What files did you actually change? You never have to tell them that again. They can go to the bug. It will be stamped with this build, and inside there is all the code that you changed and exactly what build that it's in. On the left-hand side, or the right-hand side, excuse me, you're going to be able to see that we have our test results. And we have our beautiful code coverage down here at the bottom that lets me know how well my team is doing about making sure we're ensuring quality in what we're delivering. And again, along the bottom, it's Visual Studio Team Services guiding us on that DevOps journey, saying you should actually create a release to take the output of this build and start deploying it to your end users. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and click on that and see where it takes us. It's basically going to guide me, just like it did with our build system, through the release process. We have templates, just like we did before, that allows me to pick something and very quickly start to deploy my code. Remember I said any language, any platform? I told you didn't have to leave the source control that you wanted. If you happen to already be using Jenkins, you don't even have to leave Jenkins. We can pull those artifacts from your current CI system and start deploying them for you with our tool set to any platform that you want. I'm obviously using ours, so I'm going to go ahead and check this box, which means every time my build finishes, this is automatically going to kick off and start deploying my code down the pipeline. And I'll use the same agents I was using before. So now what we're going to get is this build definition. It's very, very similar to our release definition, which is very similar to our build definition. And that's on purpose. We want you to naturally feel comfortable here after spending time with our build system. Same task, same architecture. So what I'm going to do now is I need to tell my team services, you need to connect to Azure for me and make sure that I can deploy into Azure with all the security that's necessary. What's really nice here is it already knows who I am, and it knows all of the Azure accounts that I have access to. I just choose the one that I want and ask it to authorize. At this point, I can go finish filling this out. So I'm going to use a parameter here so that I can go back in and set the website name for each different environments. Here, I'm going to ask it to store the output of this particular item so that I can use this value in a later task. So it's going to say, hey, I've deployed this to you. This is the URL that you can then use later should you want to. I'm also going to come over here and change this to dev. And why don't we go ahead and update the name here so that this is going to be CD. And now I'm going to do something else. It's called infrastructure as code. That is where you codify the environment upon which you want to run your application such that the tool can actually stand that environment up for you as part of your deployment. And what I'm going to do now is simply go to our task library, and I'm going to choose a task that's going to allow me to do that. So again, I'm going to Azure, so it actually knows about Azure resource groups and templates. I come over here, simply choose my account, and now what I'm going to do is actually write in here the scripts that I need to actually use. For my location, I'm actually going to switch this to Central US. Let's rename this to something a little cooler than that. So we'll get rid of this part here at the end. And what I want to do now is we need two different scripts. One script is for my website, and the other one is for the parameters that I'm going to pass in. I want to be able to control the name of the website and use the same templates in dev, QA, and prod. And what I'm going to do now is simply set that up with a parameter. By passing this in, I'm now going to be able to reuse these two tasks as they're configured through all of my different environments. All I have to do now is define this variable. I can do that at the environment level, and what I'm going to do now is configure a new variable, come here and call it my website, and I'm simply going to call this one the D version or the debug version of Bike Sharing 360. Now I can quickly create a QA by cloning this one, simply calling this guy QA. But before I do, this is a good segue into another part here. This is called an approver. An approver is either a collection of groups or individuals that allow them to give the thumbs up before we continue moving down the pipeline. So if I'm the QA lead, I don't want every CI build going to inside my QA environment because it would invalidate all my test results. So by putting me here, it's basically saying I safeguard this environment. The tool has to get my permission, and I could put groups here, I could do a collection of individuals. They all have to give a thumbs up before we keep moving the pipeline. So this is protecting my QA environment. So I'm simply going to change this to QA, and all I have to do now is update that one variable, and now this is all ready to go to QA just as easy as we went to dev. And why not go ahead and push this all the way into production by cloning this one more time and then putting this to prod. I'm going to update my variable, and I'm going to do one more thing because Brian talked about quality, and quality is really important. I showed you how we could run unit tests and even calculate code coverage, but testing doesn't stop in your build. You can test as part of your release as well. So what we're going to do is come back to our task list. We're going to go to the test hub, and as you can see here, we have load test, performance test. We can run functional UI test, we can run pen test, whatever it is that you want to run. I'm just going to run a quick load test here. So what I'm going to do now is come in and configure this guy. I need to give it the website URL, and then I need to give it a test name. And that's all I have to do, and I now have a complete CI/CD pipeline in about 9 minutes, right? So everyone that just watched me can do this exact same thing, okay? Thank you. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to go ahead and kick off a release. This release will automatically run every single time I check in code, but I want to let you go ahead and see it running here as well. When I start a release, it's just like our build system. I can go and actually watch the release running in real time should I need to. So the logs will start streaming here in just a second. But what I want to do is show you one other feature while that's running. We have dashboards inside of our tool that allow me to build a heads-up display for my team. I've already pinned my release to it. I'm also going to pin my build to it as well. So let's go over here and put this on my dashboard. And then what I'm going to do is take you to my dashboard. My dashboard can be put on a monitor in my team room so that my entire team sees it every time they walk in and out of our room. I can come down here and I can edit it. I can drag these tiles around and customize this to make sure it shows the important information for my team. If the tile that I need is not there, I can actually go to a gallery of tiles that we have that are added by extensions, and the majority of these come right out of the box. If there's a tool you're using today and that information you want to surface on this dashboard, you can write this widget yourself and go pull that information, and now you have this one place that your team can go to see exactly the health of their application. We can pull data from application insights so that you can monitor your application and see everything, the health, the build, the releases, all in one simple place. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and save this. And these tiles are interactive. So what I can do is I can click on this and actually take me back to the release that we were watching just a moment ago. And as you can see, the release has already succeeded. When I started this, there was nothing in Azure. It created a resource group, it created a place for application insights, it created a website, and it deployed it into it in the amount of time it took me to show you a dashboard. And what I can do now is if I wanted to, I could approve it. But before I approve it, I should go back over here and prove that it actually did something. So if I refresh this, what should happen is you'll see my resource group in Azure. Never came to the portal to create this. I could delete this right now, rerun my release, and this entire environment will be stood back up for me again. And what I can do now is simply go and browse to my particular website. And every piece of code that I change, every check-in that I make is actually going to run its way into this particular website for me every single time. So I took code that was sitting inside a repository. I was able to create a CI build, create an entire pipeline for dev, QA, and prod, and push it in about 10 minutes standing here right in front of you. We can do this for any language, for any platform. We've basically just given all of you a superpower to be able to do this. Thank you so much, guys.
All right. Thank you so much, Donovan. He has just showed you how easy it is to go from zero to DevOps in 10 minutes. That is super cool, but that's just code. What about data? Data is the hardest part because code, you can just deploy and overwrite whatever you had before and everything's good. Do you want to do that with data? No, you don't ever want to lose your data. So data you can't just redeploy. You have to incrementally migrate your data forward, change after change after change. So in order to help with that, we have partnered with Redgate, the best of the best when it comes to data lifecycle, to help you manage the lifecycle of your data and the migration of your production data in sync with the updates of your code. I'm going to bring Donovan back up to do a great demo of Redgate.
Did you guys miss me? Our DevOps products are so nice, we're going to show them to you twice, right? But this time we're going to do it from a database perspective. DevOps is the union of people, process, and products to enable continuous delivery of value to our end users. And that includes the database. You can't forget about it. Too many of us deploy all the front end and then have to go back in and figure out a way that we're going to do the database. With a partnership with Redgate, we can now integrate that as part of your DevOps pipeline. So what I'm going to do here real quick is show you that this is actually in the box already. When you go to install Visual Studio, you can actually see that ReadyRoll, SQL Prompt, and SQL Search are actually in the box. There's nothing for you to do but install Visual Studio, and these products are here to help you. So let me show you how these tools actually work. So here I am inside Visual Studio, as I should be as a normal developer. But what's different about this scenario is this solution has a ReadyRoll project in it. So I don't just have my front end, but I actually have the code for my back end as well. Because when you build your application, version your application, and deploy your application, it should be the entire solution. And ReadyRoll now enables that for us. So let's imagine that I've made a code change in my front end that requires a change to my back end as well. And let's show you how ReadyRoll is going to help us do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a column to my bikes table that allows me to check when the last time we maintained a particular bicycle. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to use the SQL Server Object Explorer, but you could use whatever tool that you want. If you're more comfortable in SSMS and you're a creature of habit and you want to go do your changes there, knock yourself out. And then what you're going to do is be able to come back into this tool and make the changes that you need to with ReadyRoll. But I'm going to do it directly here in Visual Studio because they've made an incredible editing experience directly right here inside of my IDE. So what I've done is I've basically brought up a tool that's going to allow me to modify the schema of my database. So it's loading the schema of that table. And what I'm going to do now is simply add a new column here. And the column that I'm going to add is going to be a date time. So let's go ahead and put a date time in there. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to update my local copy of my database. So this is my dev version that I dev against. And all I'm going to have to do once I have this updated is basically ask ReadyRoll to please go back in and refresh itself so that it understands what changes were made. I simply click on refresh. Now what it's going to do is it's going to analyze my database compared to what it thought it looked like and show me what the differences are right here inside of my IDE. Talk about shifting it left, right? There's no black magic. There's nothing that's going to happen that I'm not aware of. It's actually going to be able to show me right here that there's been a change. Now the change is that we added a column to my database. This looks great to me. So what I'm going to do now is simply say, please import this as a migration script. This is giving you all the power of code-first migrations without you having to even use Entity Framework. You can use this now against any database that you want. So now in here, I have this new migration. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and rename this migration to something a little bit more meaningful to me. I will then be able to identify this migration as part of my build and a part of my release because it's going to be easier for me to read. Now, when I add columns, sometimes I also need to add data to those columns. But I'm not a database admin. Sometimes writing that SQL can be problematic for me. I spend more time searching for how do I write an update command than writing the update command itself. But thanks to SQL Prompt, it actually helps me write those commands. So if I come in here, what I'm going to be able to do here is basically just start to type a U. And SQL Prompt is going to jump in and say, hey, looks like you want to write an update. I do want to write an update. And then it's going to actually help me by prompting me for the tables in my database. It's then going to allow me to say, hey, if you want to do this, you're probably going to need a set. And I'm literally going to be able to use the prompt tool to be able to go ahead and do everything that I need to quickly write myself an insert command here. So I'm going to do cycle, and then I just need to go. Now, even with the help, I want to make sure that I haven't made a mistake here. So what I'm going to do here is have ReadyRoll continue to protect and help me by verifying this script for me. It's making sure that the script that I'm going to run in my deployment is going to be successful by verifying it for me right here. And now we got the green check mark saying, Donovan, everything's good. You can safely run this against your database. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this as a good. And now what I can do is simply use the taskbar here, or the status bar, and commit these changes into my repository like I normally would. But now I can submit the front-end code along with the back-end code. When I version it, when I build it, and when I label it, it's a unit now. There's no one half sits in one place, one half sits in another. We're all now working together. So let me come in here and write a comment. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and commit and push, like a man to the repo. I'm not going to do any local commits first. So what's going to happen now is this is going to push it to the repo, and a CI build is automatically going to start. So as you can see, I already have a CI build running on my team services account. It picked it up because we have CI configured. So if I come over here, what I want to show you is what the output of that build will actually be. Ready Roll actually integrates itself into our summary. So not only do I have work items, not only do I have changes here, but down here at the bottom, you can see that Ready Roll has actually integrated itself inside of my build summary, giving me a snapshot of what's actually going to happen against my database. It even identifies what tables were changed as part of that particular change. Now, if I'm not comfortable with the snapshot, I can actually go to my database script and see the entire script that's going to be run against my database. My DBA can verify this as part of our build and make sure that they're comfortable before we actually push the button to go and deploy this into our release management. Using release management, I can actually use the Ready Roll task that comes as part of the extension that allows me to take those migration scripts and apply them to my target database, making sure that all those changes get shipped with the actual application itself. This is one pipeline that makes sure that the front end and the back end get deployed as a unit. You can also see that we're running additional tests there because now it's just an integral part of our normal DevOps pipeline. I don't have to do anything special. We treat it like any other part of our deployment pipeline. And if we look at our summary, we get that same nice, rich update of we had successfully deployed our changes. We're able to see the migration plan again and even get another snapshot of our database script. With the partnership of Redgate, Ready Roll is allowing you to make sure that you implement DevOps completely and fully, incorporating your front end as well as your back end. Thanks so much, guys.
Fantastic. All right, thank you so much, Donovan. All right, so the great news is that now not only have we done all this work to integrate Redgate, but we've now made Redgate part of Visual Studio Enterprise. So if you get Visual Studio Enterprise 2017, you automatically get all those database tools, and you have everything you need to automate your full DevOps pipeline. And wait, there's more. So of course, Visual Studio Enterprise is our premier DevOps experience. It has an awesome mobile development experience. It has great productivity tooling to help developers manage the complexity of their applications, manage the quality of their applications, and deliver great applications. It has awesome features to help you manage and improve the quality, things like live unit testing and the awesome debugging features that you saw. And Visual Studio Enterprise also includes free training and Azure credits to help you get started in the cloud. And with 2017, we're announcing a bunch of new capabilities for Visual Studio Enterprise subscribers, including extending the Pluralsight offering from 1 year and to 1 year, and for the full Pluralsight catalog. We're also adding things like White Source. White Source is a really cool open source management tool. Everybody these days is using open source, and the problem is open source gets out of control. You don't know where you're using it, you don't know what security vulnerabilities, you don't know what bugs that open source has because you didn't write it, you didn't manage it. White Source helps you manage that. We've worked with White Source just like we worked with Redgate to integrate it into Visual Studio and into our DevOps offering to help you manage your open source use, find out when there are security vulnerabilities in open source code you're using, find out when your version's out of date, and make using open source better. And not only is Visual Studio Enterprise an awesome tool for your developers, but we're introducing a new offer that we call the Enterprise DevOps Accelerator that helps bring the power of Visual Studio Enterprise to your whole team. If you equip your team with Visual Studio Enterprise, then not only do your developers get to use Visual Studio Enterprise and all those cool things I just talked about, but it brings all the DevOps capabilities as well, including full CI/CD capabilities, all of the agents and pipelines that you need, including hosted in the cloud. If you want to host your builds and releases in the cloud, you get it. You don't have to pay for it separately. You get all the build and release you need. You want to do your builds and releases on premises, you get that too. In addition, you get deeply discounted Azure pricing for all your dev test needs. So maybe you want to set up test environments in the cloud. Maybe you want to run developer desktops in the cloud. You get big Azure discounts in order to do that. Probably the most amazing thing to me is you get on-site consulting to help you transform your development process into a modern DevOps process. To learn more about the DevOps Accelerator offer, go to aka.ms/DevOps now. So throughout the morning, we've talked about how great the improvements in Visual Studio 2017 are for productivity, for quality. We've talked about the advancements we've brought to the cloud and how we've made cloud development and deployment so much better. We've talked about how we've got the best in the world mobile development tools to help you build apps on virtually any device on the planet. And we've talked about how our DevOps tooling can help you advance the state of your development process, whether it's cloud, whether it's on-prem, whether it's mobile, to help you deliver maximum value to your customer and deliver the best possible experience that you can. All right, I want to thank you all very much for coming today. And I want to encourage you to go download Visual Studio 2017 today. It's available on visualstudio.com. I also want to encourage you to hang out the rest of the day as we have some interactive sessions with some of our engineers to talk about how we did this and some of the cool stuff that we've done. And then tomorrow, join us again. We have all-day online training to go deep on some of these topics and understand how you can apply them in your environment. Again, visit visualstudio.com to stay up to speed. Thank you.